Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert, your host, the founder, publisher, editor of Native News Online. We have a very special guest today, Amy Denet, and she is Navajo, but she's been everywhere. She's been featured on CNN, the Champions of Change earlier this year. We did an article back in May. Our Kaylee Berg interviewed her, and she's been in the Washington Post. But she's doing really fantastic work on the Navajo reservation. But she has a very interesting story as well, and so we want to talk to her for a few minutes. And but the highlight of why she's here is they are giving away 5,000 skateboards and helmets. And I just want to hear all about it. So she's doing amazing work, and I want to hear about the skateboard garden. So Amy, welcome to Native Bidaské. How are you today?
I'm good. Good morning. So nice to talk to you, and just really excited to talk about this upcoming distribution.
Well, tell us how that even came about. I mean, 5,000, that's pretty tremendous. And how did you get
Well, funding? I'll just tell you, 5,000 is 50 pallets, 6 feet high, 800 pounds each. So it sounds really great, but it's also going to be a lot of work.
Sounds like hard work.
Hard work. But, after COVID, everybody that's worked in the pandemic doing mutual aid, we have so many relatives that have been helping with the packing, the shipping, the transport, that it really feels good to be back together again, doing this community work together. So how did it come about? Well, about a year ago, we had the first ever all-girl skate jam. It was called Modern Matriarch Skate Jam. And my friend Michaela Ramirez, who runs Poseidon Foundation, had actually introduced me to the founders of Monarch Skateboard. And they said they had 5,000 skateboards. Would I be interested? And then I was like, well, that's a lot. But they told me the price, and they said they really wanted these to go to Native youth and not go to like a TJ Maxx or a Marshall's, kind of distribution. And they were so kind to have held these boards for us for a whole year until we could get the resources to pay for them. So we've been doing a crowd fund, we've been doing sponsor meetings, we've been doing all those things you do to kind of raise the money that you need, and also to do the distribution. And really just the last 6 months, we've kind of come through and been able to finance the whole thing. So we thought, what better place to distribute these than the Navajo Nation fairs, because each of them have a youth day where all the kids actually come to us and they get bussed in from their schools. It's mostly elementary school kids. So we have just been having the best time ever planning these events in Window Rock, Shiprock, and Tuba City, getting ready for larger distributions.
Well, that's really exciting. And hey, I actually want to backtrack a little bit about and talk about the fact that skateboarding is so huge in Indian country. I remember being at the Pueblo Museum there in Albuquerque a couple of years ago, and they had this whole section that skateboards that people from the various Pueblos had actually done some artwork on, and it was just fantastic to see. And but talk about that skateboarding. I mean, even the president of the whole nation, President Bruce Rickert, is a skateboarder. And so
he popped a ollie at our. He popped ollies with Tony Hawk at our skate park when we opened it.
Allie Young is doing something about get out the vote this year with skateboard.
Yeah, Allie does.
About that whole it's very intriguing. I mean, maybe a lot of our viewers don't know about it. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask me why skateboarding, and after COVID, I just wanted something to really bring some joy to the kids that I knew in my community in Two Great Hills. So, every skateboarder, native or non-native that you talk to, you ask them, what does skateboarding mean to you? And they pretty much say the same thing, is that it saved their life. It's a sport that you can do anytime. If you have a skate park, if you have the equipment, you can do it by yourself. You can do it with friends. You can compete, or you can just use this as an outlet to kind of work through things from your day. But I just think it's a great tool for our kids because, they love the sport. From all the kids that we've seen at Two Gray Hills and that surrounding area and all the other kids we've visited, they're just so excited about it. Like, it's just something that they really look forward to, and it really is bringing the families together because at our skate park at Two Gray Hills, you're seeing intergenerational gatherings of, the little ones, the little ones coming to see their big brother or big sister skate. You're seeing aunties, uncles, and parents and grandparents all coming just to hang out at these parks because we're really lacking those, kind of community gathering spaces in the remote areas of Navajo Nation. So I think just building more skate parks is a great solution to not only make our kids more mentally and physically healthy, but then also just to bring these communities together and have a space where they can gather. So, our plan is to build more skate parks in the future, but after we built the first one, we realized there's this incredible need to provide the equipment because the families don't have those resources. So we started working on equipment distribution early on. We also started working on mentorship programs to make sure the kids have somebody teaching them who's Denet. So we have Sunshine Harrison leading our skate school, where he'll drive around to different spaces, mostly to Two Gray Hills, 2 or 3 times a week, teaching our kids, keeping them safe. As they progress in the sport, we're gonna have to get better and better at instructing them because there's no reason why we will not be in the Olympics in the future because, how talented we are in sports. It's just having that access to these spaces that we haven't been before. So skate parks are necessary. Skateboard equipment is necessary. Skateboard mentorship is necessary. So I'm just having the best time ever as Auntie providing these resources because my background came from a corporate active sportswear career. So I'm simply just connecting the dots to make these things happen. And, maybe that's why Creator put me outside of the reservation to grow up, is so I could bring back different gifts and different abilities to help out our people. And definitely outdoor recreation is a key thing for our kids because it connects us to the land, to the outdoors, to the earth and sky, but our bodies and our minds. So it's just like, I couldn't imagine a better space for our children to be in. Just hanging out when I go out to the park, it's just seeing how happy and joyful they are. So, yeah, it's just been a beautiful, beautiful journey that I've personally taken just being able to be part of this.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and I think it's something to be said about children getting out, doing the physical
Yeah.
exercise instead of inside watching television all day or even playing video games. And
Yeah,
they all have this purpose. I understand that, but that physical activity is just
it's
keeps
so
our kids
important.
healthier, trimmer, the whole deal, just for our overall health.
Yeah,
And
and I think it's confidence too. The one thing, and President Nygren said this when he came out to the kids, is like one of the best learning lessons in life is to fall down and get back up. Because
mm,
that's how we get better at things. That's how we learn to
yes,
do things better. And I've just seen kids that were very shy. When I first met them, they were like in kindergarten, first grade, and now through this process of the skate park, they're in fourth, fifth, sixth grade now, and the confidence they've achieved is phenomenal. Like one of the young women, her name is Rosie. She was such a shy kid when I first met her. Now she's student body president. She's doing
wow,
skate events with her dad out at the skate park. Like, you're seeing a real leader coming up just in the confidence she's gained in this sport. So, more of this, please. Like, we
yeah,
just need to
yeah.
see our kids out there.
Sounds as if it's very therapeutic. So, hey, I want to talk about in just the real practical terms
Yeah.
when you give away the skateboards and helmets. How much does a good skateboard cost,
Mhm.
and what's a helmet? And I'm sure they probably need pads for their knees and maybe for their arms. So,
Yeah.
outfit somebody to go skating, skateboarding. How much would a
About
parent have to
200
invest?
bucks for the full kit. 200
Wow.
bucks. So the
So,
skateboards we're giving out from Monarch, they're a retail of $129. And so it's something that we wanted to make sure we were giving away equipment that had longevity, that was safe, that
mhm,
was just a really great brand. There's the Sky Brown board and the Letitia I forget Letitia's last name, but they're both pro skateboarders. And, Sky just got back from the Olympics. So it's a really inspirational piece to have. And then, we have tons of stickers so they can just kind of customize the boards themselves when they pick them up. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just been a joy
Or,
to
or,
be
or
able
do
to.
the art like I saw over at the Pueblo Museum Cultural Center. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
that's fantastic. Hey, I actually want to backtrack because you have a you know interesting story, and not to open old wounds or anything, but tell us about your life's journey. I mean, you were adopted out
yeah,
and you grew up in Indiana. So
yeah.
talk about your journey discovering who you are as a Navajo woman, Dene woman, and has led to the great things you're doing now. But talk about your journey.
Yeah, so I was born in 1964. I just turned 60 this year. But really, that was before ICWA. And so, my story is the story of many relatives in my age group where, our families were probably part of boarding school. My mom was part of Indian relocation to Ohio,
Hmm.
got pregnant with me, and then had no contact with her birth family or no connection to our culture through the adoption processes that happened in the 50s, 60s, even as late as the early 70s. So my journey was this huge imposter syndrome for most of my life of never really feeling like I fit in. Growing up in the Midwest, there really weren't any Diné relatives that I had met, so I didn't really know anything about my culture except what I learned at that point in like National Geographic, because there wasn't the internet, there wasn't relevant television like there are now for our kids to connect with. So I was pretty lost in not really knowing who I was for a very long time, and, struggled a lot with addiction to deal with that, through most of my adult life. And, finally, when my daughter graduated high school, it was time, because I had this new chapter I was entering as an empty nester. I thought it was time that I came home and that I figured it out. And through that process, just coming out here, being in New Mexico, being close to the homeland, starting to meet Diné relatives, starting to do the work in mutual aid that was so necessary for all of us to come together during the pandemic. I just met so many other like-minded people and really started finding my way it was almost like, those toddler years of learning the culture, because no one had ever taught me how to tie my moccasins. No one had ever taught me really basic protocol. So even though I was in this very adult role, I was like a child kind of stumbling around, and, a lot of people were bullying me because, of all the things I didn't know that I was so anxious to learn, but it seems so weird to be teaching a 50-year-old, woman these things that you would normally teach a child. So that was a time where it was like really fast forward in my learning, but also understanding how important this community work could be for my own healing. This feeling that there was a purpose for me being gone and coming back was kind of just to come full circle back to my indigeneity. And all these things that we've worked on through For Kinship have been such joyful projects because I got to work with amazing relatives in our tribe, got to work with our kids, got to work with our elders, but also got to know who I was as a Diné woman. So it's just been a really beautiful healing journey, and just so much joy in being back home, being of service, understanding my life's purpose, which I think is really just to build bridges for the next generation, whether it's through outdoor recreation, fashion, performance spaces, creative spaces, fashion spaces. I've had all these years outside, but now that I'm back home, the things I do every day actually have meaning to me, because I'm not just creating wealth for this giant machine of a colonizer company. I'm back home using this reinvestment of the wealth we create back into our own people. So it's
Hmm.
a real way to practice reciprocity, to work on legacy projects for future generations. And it makes a lot of sense to me in terms of a brand platform, because the brand is very visible because of my background in fashion, but to use that visibility as a indigenous brand and create awareness of how you can be and operate as a business, right? Because these big companies can be doing so much more if they just start learning that balance of reciprocity of giving back. So that's where we're hoping we make a difference. That's hoping for me just, to continue this pathway in the future and build more bridges to make things easier for this next generation.
And I really appreciate what you're doing because, quite frankly, our children throughout Indian country need that. They need that help. And so what you're doing is very amazing. Hey, now how did you get into fashion design? That intrigues me.
I think from the time I can remember, I've been obsessed with sewing, textiles, making things since I was little. So it was just a natural progression in my career. I didn't have much training, but I got into the Fashion Institute of Technology in the early 80s. So I don't know, I was probably one of the first ever Indigenous designers, I would assume, because I hadn't really met anybody else or identified with anybody else. But yeah, I just went to school in New York and got this amazing job at Cannondale straight out of school. From Cannondale, went to Reebok. From Reebok, went over to Europe and was creative director at Puma. So it's been this amazing career of just falling forward into things, always being in the right place at the right time somehow. And it's come full circle because all those skills I learned through managing, high level design companies, large projects, having my hands in all the different jobs has allowed me to come back and be a pretty good mentor from everything from the marketing, the making, the producing, the selling, all those things that you need to do in a small business. I'm able to do most of it myself and also work with other young people and pass on some of that information. So it's certainly helped a lot in the skate park project because I was able to have these meetings with corporate giants like the skate park project, which is Tony Hawk's Foundation, DC Shoes, Vans, these big conglomerates, right? And actually be able to have them meet with me and pull in that sponsorship because I speak their language. I mean, I worked in these businesses for close to 40 years now. So it's made it to me make sense of why Creator put me kind of on the outside because it's able for me to come back and share this wealth of knowledge and hopefully fast forward a bunch of our young people in fashion careers or creative careers just because I've had such a long tenure in so many different areas of designs and distribution globally. Because a lot of these companies have produced all over the world, have sold all over the world. I've worked all over the world. And it's just beautiful to be back here in New Mexico and to be able to share all that knowledge with our young people that are interested in going into design because there's not a lot of Indigenous designers my age or that have had my experience, right?
Mhm.
So I understand them, but I understand the outside. So it creates this beautiful synergy where we can share those resources from both directions and hopefully get them in a better space where we have more representation. I talk a lot about, it's not just a vertical platform where there's one brand or one person rising to the top in Indigenous design communities. How do we do this? How do we create an army of young people in all creative fields, not just in design, in production, in marketing, in DEI, in brand management, in retail management? Like, there's so many jobs and so many layers of jobs in the creative industry of fashion. We need to have kids in all of those areas. So how do we get more access from our tribal communities into these schools that allow our kids to get that knowledge so they can get jobs? And the really cool thing is some of those jobs now after the pandemic are remote. So that means they could even be working remotely and stay in our communities, but still have jobs in fashion. So it's a really exciting time. It's really a time for us to start planning how we get more representation in all areas of fashion. So yeah, we've been working with all different behind the scenes. And certainly I've gone back to my school, which was FIT, and we're trying to build bridges between Native schools and New York City to see how we can get more kids there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's exciting because our other sister publication, Tribal Business News, had a summit, economic summit based
Mm-hmm.
in Michigan recently, and
Wow.
one of the discussions is you're not finding Native students really interested in business. I mean, yes, there's teachers, social workers, which all have a great place. We need attorneys, but really we need more students, kids and young adults, older adults. Go back, get your education, get involved with business, and business can be really fun, and you make it sound fun. I mean, just so many different there's so many different aspects of business, right? Marketing side of it, and I like to encourage people, even if they're not seeking a business degree, take 1 or 2 business classes. You can't go wrong, because later in life you just never know. People need to know about business. So,
They do,
what was
but
your response to that? Yeah.
well, there's one thing I want to touch on because, like, we talk about the wealth and appropriation, like, so culturally, right?
Hmm.
Indigenous people, Native folks, we have the cultural wealth of the world because everyone wants to take it from us.
They sure
So
do.
how do we actually take that cultural wealth and create that wealth for ourselves, right? That's to me the end of appropriation, is when we have the tools in order to use everything that's been passed on for generations and generations, that's part of our DNA and part of our ancestry that we carry with us. How can we actually create that wealth for ourselves? Not in wholesale, not in vendor markets or things
Mhm.
like, how do we actually create that wealth for ourselves? So we're doing a lot of work with Shopify Build Native programs right now, because through e-commerce, we can go directly globally as Native vendors. Working with TurboTax, trying to get kids more adept at, once they get that wealth, how do
Mhm.
they manage that wealth? Working with Pinterest, Pindigenous, in order to understand how we can broadcast that out and have our own stories told within a beautiful platform of marketing like Pinterest. But these are all the things that we want to do in order to teach our kids. And it's just like there's so many ways that we can help them thrive where they don't have to move outside of our communities. They can learn to run their small businesses at home. And in terms of getting our kids into the right schools, one of the biggest things I have a problem with is a lot of these colleges, they never come to the reservation for outreach. Like, I remember when my daughter was growing up in California, because I told you I raised my daughter in Southern California. My
Mhm.
God, there was like probably 20 schools that came for career fairs to her high school.
Mhm.
Why aren't these colleges coming to the reservations to let our kids know about these opportunities? Because they steal, like fashion schools, they steal all the cultural wealth, with
Yes.
appropriative things, but why aren't they coming directly to us to offer those opportunities and scholarships?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
those conversations have started. I asked the same question of, have you ever been to a tribal community for your outreach? Have you ever done a career fair? And the answer right now is all no. So we need to start asking more questions of these spaces to make sure our kids know of opportunities they have, and then help guide them either through scholarships or mentorship programs to make sure they get there safely, that they thrive once they get to these locations. So I think that's the big thing with all of us as the elders and the older generation. We need to make sure these young ones are able to create these dreams. If we've
Mhm.
all had careers in different places, how can we go back with the knowledge we have and make sure our young people have an easier time, or have a guided way, or might even have a mentor just to ask those questions to? So it's taking that time, taking that space to make sure you're doing the work to give back from all these years you might have had in different careers, if you're a Native elder or someone that's had a longer tenure in a career. So
Mhm.
certainly with 40 years under my belt, I have a lot of things I want to give back and help out, because anybody can benefit from that. So yeah, it's a big part of what I do with my time.
Well, that's beautiful, and I will say this: as you were talking, I really got to me thinking about how creative our Native people really are,
Oh my
and
gosh.
it's starting to show up in fashion and elsewhere, in television or wherever. And tell me this: did you have a mentor? And if so, you don't have to name the name, but tell me about a mentor you had that helped guide you throughout life.
Yeah, honestly, back you're talking to somebody that was in the design career in the 80s. I mean, I struggled hard enough at that time being a woman in an
Yes.
industry. I think if anybody's watched some of the movies about the athletic industry in the 80s, it was a very male-dominated industry. So I was just trying to survive in that aspect in the 80s. So I think that for me, a lot of it was self-taught. A lot of it probably had to do with the fact that having imposter syndrome my whole life since I was a child, we always overcompensate, right? I think a lot of Native folks out there, if you were adopted, you're always trying to like shoot the goal because you want to make sure that you're
I don't
safe.
think it applies just to adopted people.
Maybe everybody then, but like, yeah, I
The
just
inside joke is Native people have to work double hard just to prove ourselves. So,
we
but yeah, I
do.
get what you're
Yeah, we
saying.
do. I think BIPOC, anybody does. So I
Yeah.
think that was the thing of always trying to overachieve and putting crazy hours in, gave me a real passion to learn more, create more. And so a lot of it was self-guided at that time. I wish I would have had, my 60-year-old self mentoring my 25-year-old self, because
Yes,
I definitely would have made different choices. We can all say that as we
for
get
sure.
older.
That's
But
for
it's an absolute joy to be able to pass on this information. And I'm hopeful, if anybody out there's listening, if you're ever interested in a design career in active sportswear, just know I got your back, because, I worked my way up through that industry. I had a love of color, of patterns, of things that you could move and be in motion. I love technology. So I was there at the early days of all the fiber technology. And then, just that growth of these smaller brands into the Goliaths that they became later on. So, yeah, I'm just really anxious to pass on this information to our young people. And I don't know, I think in the next couple years, once, the different community initiatives start having different leaders in charge of them as they grow, I think I might actually probably launch an activewear line in the next years, just as a way to give back.
well,
So
you keep us posted. I want to talk to you again. This has been wonderful, and we're running
oh,
out of time. Hey, real quick, tell us how these will, when and where they will be distributed.
yeah,
The
so
skateboard.
the next one is going to be Shiprock on October. Oh, hold on, let me just pull up my calendar real quick.
Okay.
I think it's October 3rd in. Yeah, the next one is October 3rd in Shiprock at the Shiprock Fair at the Northern Navajo Fair. And the one after that is at Tuba City, which is going to be on October, looks like it's on the 16th.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
we've been talking to Amy Denet. I'm sorry,
Denet.
Deal. Denet, the Denet woman, and who's doing fantastic work with her fashion design and developing skate parks, and now giving away 5,000 skateboards and helmets. And so I know why you're one of the 14 people CNN chose as the champions of
Oh,
change. Congratulations to you, and we really
okay.
appreciate all you're doing. All you're doing.
So
And
appreciate it. So appreciate it. It takes a village. So there's so many people behind the work we do. It's the whole community that has come together. So I just want to thank anybody and everybody that's been part of the work we've been doing over the last 5 years back in New Mexico and on the reservations. So thank you so much, and just for amplifying our story.
yeah. And to our viewers, Chimi Gwitch, for tuning in to another episode of Native Bidaské. We are in the height of the election season. So, however, I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but make sure you register to vote. And if you're not sure you're registered, right now is a great time to make sure you're registered to vote, so there's no hiccups when you go to that voting booth. And I will say this, I'll leave you with this: when warriors vote, we win, and we need to win. So Chimigwech, and we'll tune in next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. In the meantime, be safe. Young ones, hold tight to give your grandmas and aunties hugs. So take care. See you next week.
See ya.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to scan this code or go to the link below to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, and please be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chimi Gwech.